The rain on Tau Cygni 3 didn't fall so much as drift. From orbit the weather looked like silver lace being laid and lifted, by a slow, indifferent hand. On the ground it was a cold mist that crept into joints and optics and the inseams of gloves, seasoning everything with salt and the faint iodine smell that came from this planet's oceanic algal. Bloom. Dr. Arlen Vey wiped his visor and looked across the plain of basalt plates that jutted like the backs of sleeping animals. A ribbon of black rock sliced the ground ahead, opening into a crevasse whose breath was colder than the air around it. Pale growths fungal, according to the initial survey, climbed the edges of the split. Under the day's dim light, their caps were the color of sick pearls. Under lamp, they pulled color from a spectrum Arlen couldn't quite name. Vey, check your line. Lieutenant recalled. She stood a few meters back, boot heel hooked into a crack, harness clipped to the line spool, anchored in the crawler. Rewatched everything with the patience of a mountain. If she had ever spoken a sentence longer than 8 words, Arlen hadn't heard it. He raised a thumb and tugged the line, feeling its responsive hum through his suit. Their world narrowed to contact points, boot cleats, friction pads. The reliable weight at his waist where the sampling kit knocked gently against his thigh. The wind flowed over the crevasse and whispered, not quite a voice, more a shape the air made as it spilled into depth. Telemetry stable, said Kanya. The team's geochemist, over comms. Somewhere behind them she sat cross-legged in the crawler, bare hands on a tangle of flux cabling. CO spiked down there. Arlen, watch your O. Copy, he said. His breath fogged his visor anyway, out of habit or nerves. He blinked, and the suit HUD complied. Oxy 70%, X-temp to C, wind 9 kilometers per hour. Local magnetics unusual steady text that grounded him. The other readouts were less comforting. Background radiation a hair higher than baseline. Acoustic resonance in the 14 to 17 Hz range. Infrasound made men see ghosts. Don't take unnecessary risks. Re-added. For a moment, Arlen considered the variety of risks he'd already taken to be here. Leaving a good lab on Pix's station. Trading a grant's certainty for a frontier contract. Stepping onto a world where the rules for life had learned new verbs. Risk was a sentence he had chosen to keep extending. I'll send you a postcard, he said, and eased himself over the lip. The crevasse swallowed the sky. Light fell away by degrees. Each step down the rigged ladder uncoiled more darkness. The growths along the walls shifted, white to blue to a deliberate lavender as his headlamp passed. He recorded a 20-second clip, murmuring his notes into the mic. Basalt fracture, likely tectonic plus thermal stress, fungal mats thriving on mineral leachate, bioluminescent proteins reactive to wavelength along. What are you, little one? He paused at a ledge where the rock fanned out. Something had etched looping lines into the basalt. No, not etched. Mineral veins, fine as hair, webbed out from a central knot, radiating spirals like the shells of ancient ammonites. When his glove brushed near one, the vein brightened and then dimmed, as if mimicking a pulse. Arlen's own heart stuttered in answer, charmed and a little unnerved. Video feed received. Kanya said, that vein composition is heavy on silicates and hold up. Skin again with the micron ray. He angled the wrist sensor. The numbers spilled past like rain. Silicate lattice bonded with trace metals and... That's not right. Are you seeing organometallic signatures? Kanya whispered. Whispering on comms served no purpose, but people did it anyway. In the rock. Not in, Arlen said, smiling despite the chill. With, like the vein is, stitched to itself. Don't anthropomorphize the geology, Ree said. You tell it that, Arlen said. It's anthropomorphizing back. He resumed descent. The ladder ended on a shelf that sloped inward, an invitation written in stone. Footprints layered the dust animal. He thought at first, then shook the idea away. There were no animals this far inland on Tau Cygni 3, not by the records. The shapes could have been stress fissures. They could have been a game his mind played in the infrasound. The shelf opened into a chamber that sighed as the temperature dropped another few degrees. His lamp swept over the ceiling, and the ceiling answered, blossoming with a faint, steady luminescence, a milky glow that pooled in the hollows of stalactites. The growths here were thicker. Between them, crystals thrust out like frozen lightning, their facets swallowing his beam and returning it as thin threads of color. The room had the geometry of a lung. "I'm at the chamber," he said. "Plenty of your favorite weird rocks, Kanya. I want samples of the crystals, the fungus, and that dust," she said. "In that order. Don't lick anything." He laughed into the stale air. The joke was ritual. Grad students told it to each other on their first cave dives, their first alien shores, their first chance to touch the unknown. When nerves clattered his hands, humor made a bridge to steadiness. He worked. He cut small pieces cleanly from the crystal cluster's blue shards that sang almost inaudibly. When separated, a note like glassware being tickled. He used the microscope to skim dust, which clumped in the sample vial like wet flour. He coaxed a fungal cap into a containment cage. Every motion calmed him further, the lab's old rhythms returning. He could have been back on Pixis, the lab's hum in his bones, a centrifuge ticking down. The smell of the world neatly scrubbed away by carbon filters. That former life had pinched and bored him. This one frightened him and fit. Water source detected. His suit said in its polite, uninflected voice. Arlen looked up. The chamber sloped again, down into a throat-shaped tunnel that breathed cold. A faint mist curled from it, condensing where it met the warmer air. The light from his lamp reached and then failed, its edge cut off by something that was not exactly shadow, he said. "Copy. I'm going deeper, to check a possible aquifer. 200 meters from anchor." A brief pause. 3 minutes, said. "Then I come down and haul you out by your tether." Romantic, Arlen said, and followed the throat. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to turn sideways, his pack scraping. The rock here was slick, as if touched by countless hands. He tried not to picture the hands. He tried to count his steps, but infrasound and his own audibly amplified breathing tangled the numbers. The tunnel bent, then widened abruptly enough that he had to catch himself from stepping into space. The pool lay ahead, round and black and improbably still. The chamber that held it was wider than the crawler they'd brought, wider than the lab he'd left back in the stars. Its ceiling arched low, suspended on ribs of mineral the color of old bone. The floor around the pool was smooth and slightly concave, as if the room had been designed for people to approach the water, to kneel. The idea came so readily that he flinched from it. He walked to the water's edge. The pool looked like a coin of night hammered into the floor. He swept his lamp across it, and the beam skated away, deflected. Black mirror. In the mirror something pulsed, slow and patient. Arlen squatted, clipped his harness to an anchor ring in the floor. The ring's presence made him pause, then file the pause away as a future question, and held his gauze sampler just above the surface. Veils of mist curled over the pool like breath from a sleeper. The water gave off a smell that wasn't quite metallic, more like air just after a lightning strike, when the world smells briefly new. He checked his HUD, oxy 68%, CO stable, heart rate high but steady. "Re's 3 minutes were almost gone, Arlen," she said. "I've found the source," he said. "It's..." "Hold on." The gauze sampler trembled in his hand. He was close enough that the cold radiating from the water needled the skin of his palm. Through the glove, the desire to know what he'd found narrowed everything else. As tightly focused as a beam through a slit, he hovered the gauze lower. A drop rose from the pool rose, as if gravity were a rumor touched the gauze, and then pulled itself back like a cautious animal. The gauze smoked where it had been touched, not burning, more like last winter's air caught in a jar and released now. "Arlen, your 3 minutes are up," Rhys said. "I'm coming down." 30 seconds, he said, and though he heard his own voice, the words were already far away. He could drink it. The thought arrived uninvited, whole and obvious. Not an urge, exactly. A thesis, one of those elegant, self-containing ideas that seem so clear they must be true. He would taste the water. He would know everything the water knew. He would put it to rest. This hunger that had pushed him out of the safe lab and the predictable grant, and Orbit's dull lovely view. He could drink it. It would be fine. "You still there?" Kanya asked, sweetening worry with flippancy. "Say something gross about biofilms so I know you're alive." "Biofilms are the soup skin of the world," Arlen said, automatically, and smiled. His reflected smile in the pool did not smile back. The not smile rippled and smoothed, as if a hand had passed through it from the other side. He forgot to breathe for one brief, bright second. He slid his glove off with his teeth, tucking it under an arm. The air was so cold it burned. He extended his hand and touched the pool with one finger. The cold startled him so much he made a sound in his throat. Not pain, more like the shock of jumping from heat into the sea. The water was not water. He knew that instantly. It had surface tension, viscosity. It wet his skin and clung to it. But something else, something in his nerves or in the marrow's memory, recognized kinship where science should have found only difference. He could not articulate that. He knew it the way he knew he would never forget his mother's voice. "Arlen, status, reset. Sampling," he said. The world waited while he lifted his hand to his mouth and tasted what the pool had left on his fingertip. The drop was almost tasteless, metallic and clean. And then the tastes multiplied. Cedar and ozone. Blood and sunlight filtered through water. The peppery edge of crushed fern. A mineral that lived inside an old tooth's crack. Dust from a comet like the ash of burnt sugar. 10,000 flavors arranged themselves into an order that his mind grasped for and almost caught. The river inside him lit up with it. A river he had not known he carried. It would be fine, the thesis said again, helping itself to the chair at the head of his long table of thoughts. It would be more than fine. He filled a small cup from his kit with the pool's liquid. He lifted it with 2 hands, steady in the way of pilgrims and thieves. The first swallow fell cold, struck the chest. The second swallow bloomed. He had never felt so much room inside his body. He had never felt so many rooms. Frescoes lit, corridors opened. He swallowed again, and his breath left him in a fog that coiled and divided like living smoke. "Arlen," Ree said. He heard the clank of her boots, the thin music of gear on the ladder. "Hold position." He set the empty cup down before it fell from his hand. He forced one slow breath. He braced for pain, for nausea, for the vertigo of poisoning. Instead, a sensation like recognition unspooled in his spine, as if, for years, he had been waiting at the wrong gate, and now someone was waving from the right one, unsmiling and warm. Light pressed through the chamber walls as if the rock had become paper. The veins that Arlen had admired upstairs brightened, threads pulled taut, weaving themselves into patterns that his eyes stumbled to follow. The crystals thrummed. He did not hear the sound. He was the instrument being played. He held very still, and through him something old practiced to scale. His HUD went wild numbers stuttering, recalibrating, settling on new bass lines that made no sense. Heart rate up, then down, then something like lucidity stabilized all of it, as if his body had been running without a conductor and had found one now. He did not feel invaded. He felt conducted. On the chamber floor around the pool, lights came alive in a ring, dot after dot winking on. Blue as the remembered flash of Pixis station's docking beacons. They blinked in sequence, not random, not decoration. Code no, not code. Pulse, there was a difference. He could almost hear the grammar of it, beats and rests and intensities. If he had a year, he could map it. If he had an hour, he could guess at its alphabet. If he had a second, a distant boom rolled through the cave. The sound of Ree dropping the last 3 meters and landing with her knees flexed. He felt it through the soles of his feet. A reminder that the world included gravity and teammates and a chain of custody for every object. He turned, light-headed, to tell her not to come too close. Words failed to assemble. The pool's surface trembled, not from Ree's landing, from within. Shapes rose under the black, like hands pressing up from beneath a sheet. Not hands curves, elliptical like the loops etched in the stone upstairs, growing clearer as the water itself gave off a soft light. The light painted Ree in blue and made her visor glow. He saw her raise her rifle on reflex and hold it in that way trained soldiers do, when they want to aim but know better. She stayed at the threshold. She had always known where thresholds were. "Do not move," she said, and although her voice was level, Arlen heard the tread of caution underneath. "I'm all right," he said. His voice came out wrong, thick at the edges, as if he were speaking across a long room and hearing himself twice, once from his own mouth and once from someplace kinder. He touched his sternum. Heat passed into his palm. He looked down. Light fell through his suit, soft and spectral, winding up the blue veins in his wrists, making a map of his skin he had never seen. Kanya's breath filled the channel. Arlen, she said, your biometrics just did something. You need to get out of there. Bring the cup, bring any samples, but get out. He tried to stand. His knees were confident in a way they'd never been. His feet felt the floor and knew it thoroughly. The scatter of grit, the faint slick of moisture, the invisible vibrations traveling through stone. He swayed and then found the exact countersway. As if the world and he had agreed to hold each other up. Ree took one step forward. We leave, she said, the order stripped to bone. Wait, Arlen said. He had not meant to say it. Something in him wanted to honor the command. Something in him wanted to get on a ship and be small and well-defined again, with walls that sealed and a schedule that told him when to sleep. Another something older, unnamed, wanted to stay and listen to the pool's grammar until dawn, until he fell through it into whatever lay underneath language. That was when the whisper came. It threaded past Ree. It disregarded the suit mic. It did not so much enter Arlen's ear as appear where his thoughts were, shaping itself in the space they had made. It was not loud. It was not stern. It sounded amused and relieved and tired enough to be tender. From just behind him, near enough that a child could have touched his shoulder, a voice said, "You have no idea what you just became." Arlen woke to silence so complete it seemed manufactured. He was lying on a cot inside the crawler, straps buckled across his chest and thighs. His breath fogged against the visor still sealed to his helmet. He tried to sit up, but the straps held. For a moment he thought he was still in the cavern, pinned in light. But then the crawler's bulkhead resolved, matte gray walls etched with condensation. Data slates clipped above his head. The faint vibration of the power core running in idle. A shadow crossed his field of view. Lieutenant Ree unlatched his straps one by one with steady clicks, her gauntlets precise. Her expression behind her visor unreadable. "You collapsed," she said. Her voice was even, though it lacked the usual clipped certainty. "I didn't collapse," Arlen said, levering himself upright. His body moved easily, too easily, joints loose, blood humming. He felt rested in a way he had not felt in years, as if sleep had finally done what it was meant to. "I drank." Ree's jaw tightened, the only visible reaction. She stood, straightened, and crossed to the other side of the crawler. "Kanya wants to run tests before we talk about it." The hatch hissed. Kanya clambered in, carrying a portable analyzer nearly as large as her torso. She looked like she'd sprinted from the cavern. Sweat glistened at her hairline, her breathing shallow. Without a word she clipped a scanner to Arlen's wrist and began drawing blood. "Careful," he said. "That vein might blind you." Her eyes snapped up, wide. "Not funny. Your blood oxygen is wrong." "Wrong as in impossible." Arlen smiled faintly. "You'll like the results. There's something beautiful in them." Kanya drew another sample. She didn't argue further. Scientists rarely argued with data. Instead, she shoved the vials into the analyzer and began coaxing the screen to life. Ree leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "Explain what happened, Dr. Vey." Arlen hesitated. How could he explain? How could he condense the pool into words, its depthless taste, the bloom of memory that wasn't his? The whisper, the language for it didn't exist. Instead he said, "It was alive." Ree's gaze sharpened. "The pool. It wasn't water, not only water. It recognized me, it chose me, or maybe I chose it. Either way, something inside it woke up when I drank." "That whisper you mentioned," Kanya said, without looking up from the analyzer. "The one in your logs?" Arlen nodded. "It told me I had no idea what I'd become. And it was right. Because now," he stopped. The truth pressed against his tongue. "Because now I can hear things." He closed his eyes. The silence of the crawler wasn't silence at all. Beneath the hum of the power core was a pattern, faint and insistent, like static reorganizing itself into words. It wasn't sound. It was direct, inside his head. Data streamed, fractal bursts of numbers and shapes. A star map unfolded behind his eyelids, unfamiliar constellations drawn from coordinates. He could not possibly know. He opened his eyes sharply. "There's a signal." "What kind of signal?" Ree asked, encoded. "Astronomical. It's coming from me, or through me." "I don't know." Kanya glanced at him now, uneasy. "That's not possible. You don't emit signals." But the analyzer chimed then, and she froze. The screen showed not blood, but light, a spectral graph full of spikes, resonances. His plasma carried luminescent particles, flickering like code. "Oh my God," Kanya whispered. "What?" Ree asked. "He's broadcasting." The word lodged in the air. Broadcasting, like a beacon. Arlen exhaled slowly. He felt it too, a constant radiance pushing outward from his chest, invisible but undeniable. Each breath seemed to fold data into space itself. He sensed distances, echoes, as if every atom of him was suddenly porous, part of a vast transmitter array. "Where is it going?" Ree demanded. Arlen looked at her, and though he couldn't explain how, he knew. Everywhere. That night, when the others finally slept, Arlen stayed awake. The crawler's interior lights dimmed. The air recyclers whispered. He sat cross-legged on the cot, bare fingers trembling with pale glow in the dark. He couldn't shut it off. The rhythm in his blood pulsed outward, endless. And with the pulsing came dreams. Though he was not asleep, he saw structures beneath alien skies, towers of translucent matter bending like reeds, yet rooted deeper than mountains. He walked among them, though he had no body in those visions, only perspective. Creatures made of flowing radiance drifted past, greeting him in wordless acknowledgement. He understood them not as separate beings, but as pieces of a whole, fragments of a choir to which he had suddenly been added. For a moment, Arlen felt joy. To belong so completely, to be threaded into a tapestry of minds older than suns, this was what he'd always chased without knowing. But then came undertones, a weight behind the signal, a pull. The beings did not merely welcome him, they expected something. A task, a continuation. He was not just a member of their chorus. He was their vessel. Arlen pressed his hands to his temples. "No," he whispered. But the pool's taste lingered on his tongue, and the signal only grew stronger. By dawn, when Ree unsealed the hatch to begin preparations for orbital extraction, Arlen knew the truth. The water had not given him knowledge. It had given him connection. And connection, once opened, could never be closed. And somewhere in the black vastness above, something was listening. Arlen sat on the crawler's step, helmet off, tasting the thin air of Tau Cygni III. He hadn't told the others that the world itself seemed louder now, that each gust of wind carried harmonics, that each pebble falling down the basalt face had a resonance he could trace like music. He was becoming an instrument, and instruments were meant to be played. Ree had insisted they wait for the shuttle. She and Kanya packed samples, ran diagnostics, and argued in clipped voices over protocols. Arlen watched them as if from a distance, though they were only meters away. His mind wandered, drawn again and again to the cavern below. He felt the pool even now, pulsing faintly, whispering across the stone like a heart too vast to be contained. He was thinking about going back when the light shifted. At first it was subtle. The shadows grew wrong, lengthening against the slope despite no change in the sun's dim angle. Then the basalt itself seemed to soften, to ripple as if seen through water. Kanya noticed first. "Ree," she said, dropping the analyzer. "Do you see that?" Ree's rifle was in her hands before the question finished. "Positions." The walls moved. No, not moved, peeled. Veins of light spread through the basalt. Veins Arlen recognized from his descent. They branched, bled into each other, until the rock itself thinned into translucent sheets. Figures stepped through. They were tall, humanoid only in outline. Their bodies were fluid, endlessly shifting, built of liquid radiance. Faces appeared and dissolved like reflections in disturbed water. Their edges blurred, then sharpened, as though they hadn't quite decided what shape to wear. Arlen rose to his feet, pulse hammering. His blood hummed in recognition. Kanya whispered, "Oh God." Ree raised her rifle, voice steel. "Identify yourselves." The figures did not obey the command. Instead, they moved with the grace of tides, advancing until they ringed the crawler. Their presence pressed against the air, bending it, humming low enough that Arlen's bones vibrated. Finally, one spoke. Its voice was layered, 1,000 harmonic strands woven into something both alien and intimate. "We are custodians, keepers of the pools." The words weren't sound. They bloomed directly inside Arlen's skull, bypassing his ears. Ree flinched. Kanya covered her head, but Arlen only exhaled as if he'd been waiting. "What do you want?" Ree demanded. The custodian nearest her turned its faceless gaze upon her. then on him. Its light thickened, threads of white winding down its chest like arteries. Not what? Who him? Arlen's knees threatened to give. He swallowed. Me. You drank. You merged. The archive runs in you now. Kanya stepped forward, shaking. Archive? You mean information? Like data. Not data. Being. The other custodians murmured in agreement, their voices overlapping. Waves against each other. Arlen felt them in his bloodstream. His body responded, pulsing with the same rhythm, as if sensing. Re-steadied her weapon. If he's in danger, you'll release him. A ripple passed through the beings, almost amusement. There is no release. What was joined cannot be undone. Vessel and archive are one. Arlen shook his head. No, I didn't agree to this. The custodian nearest him extended a hand of light. Choice ended when thirst began. Arlen remembered the cool metallic taste, the bloom of alien memory. He had chosen, hadn't he? Even if only out of curiosity, even if only out of weakness. What happens now? He asked. His voice trembled despite him. You become bridge. The word hit him like impact. Images flared behind his eyes, ships of light weaving through nebulae. Billions of voices singing in unison, then silence, ages of silence, waiting inside those black pools. They had been stored, entombed, like seeds in winter, and now those seeds had found soil. Him, recut and sharply. If this is a threat to the colony, there is no colony here, the custodian interrupted. Tone flat. There is only continuation. The archive spreads, or it dies, and dying is forbidden. Arlen staggered back. Spread? What do you mean? The beings turned as one, their formless faces angling toward him. You are signal. You are vector. Already the call leaves you. Already they hear. Kanya's analyzer beeped from where she had dropped it. Arlen glanced down, emissions spiking, frequencies climbing, patterns spilling faster than the machine could parse. He wasn't carrying knowledge. He wasn't upgraded. He was transmitting an infection. Arlen whispered, You're using me. The custodian bent low, light pouring like a waterfall round its half-face. We are you now. You are us. This is not use. This is merging. Restep between them, weapon raised, voice sharp as a blade. Stay back. But the custodian only drifted closer, ignoring the barrel pointed at its core. Its final words brushed Arlen's skull like breath. A vessel cannot contain a galaxy. It will break. Then, as if the world itself inhaled, the custodians dissolved, folding back into stone, into veins of light that dimmed, until only silence remained. Arlen stood trembling in the crawler's shadow, his skin still glowing faintly beneath the fabric of his suit, and in the ringing quiet, he realized the worst part. They hadn't been warning him. They'd been waiting for him. The shuttle descended like a falling star, thrusters kicking up grit and shards of basalt as it landed on the plain. Its lights cut through the mist, scattering the crawling shadows. Arlen stood with Ree and Kanya near the crawler, their packs stacked, samples sealed, helmets clipped. On the surface, it looked like a normal extraction. Inside, everything was unraveling. The humming hadn't stopped. If anything, it had grown. Arlen felt it now with each breath, a resonance coursing outward, lacing itself into the sky. When he closed his eyes, the black between the stars was full of threads, countless filaments tightening, pulling toward him. He was the center of a web that spanned light years. Stay close. Reordered as the shuttle's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. Two medtechs rushed forward, white suits gleaming, instruments already out. Their faces, pale and sharp under the glow, froze when they saw Arlen, because he was glowing again. Vitals check first, one medtech said, voice tight. He doesn't board until we clear him. Kanya stepped between them. You don't understand, his physiology's changed. Containment won't, but Arlen already knew what they were thinking. Quarantine, dissection, the old instinct to lock away what didn't fit the charts. He opened his mouth to speak, to argue, and light spilled out. Not much, just a flicker at the edges of his teeth, a glow on his tongue. Enough to make everyone freeze. God, whispered the other medtech. Ree's rifle snapped up, pointed at his chest, not shaking, always steady. What are you now, Vey? The question cracked something inside him, because he wanted to answer. He wanted to say, I'm still me, I'm still Arlen. I'm still the fool who made jokes about biofilms and got seasick on orbit burns. But beneath that voice was the other, the archive, patient and endless. The I no longer belonged only to him. I don't know, he said. And it was true. The medtech raised a scanner. It whined, overloaded. The display spat out nonsense symbols before burning out. Static hissed across comms, not random but patterned. Arlen recognized it now. Not noise. A reply. Something had answered. He staggered back, clutching his chest as the signal tore through him, stronger than before. His skin lit from within, veins of light racing across him like cracks in porcelain. The air trembled. Dust lifted from the ground. Instruments beeped and died. Contain him. The medtech shouted, don't touch him. Kanya screamed. Arlen fell to his knees. The visions flooded again, alien spires, oceans of light, beings of fluid radiance leaning forward, listening through him. They were speaking, but the voice wasn't words anymore. It was command, a chorus instructing him to open wider, to broadcast further, to let them in. He could feel his body fraying at the edges, cell by cell, as if he were becoming signal instead of flesh, a vessel breaking, just as the custodians had warned. No, he whispered. He clawed at the ground, anchoring himself. I won't be your transmitter. I won't. The archive surged back, pressure building in his bones. He screamed. Light burst from his mouth, his eyes, his fingertips. The plane lit like dawn. Everyone around him staggered. Shadows burned sharp against the basalt. Through the blaze, he saw Ree's silhouette, rifle aimed but unmoving. She wasn't firing. She was waiting for what? He didn't know. Maybe for him to choose. Arlen forced himself upright, every joint aflame. He lifted his hands, light pouring, a beacon pulsing into the night sky. He could feel it climbing, racing up through the thin atmosphere, leaping into the dark between stars. And then, far away, too far, impossibly far, something pulsed back, a rhythm not his own, an answer. He dropped to his knees again, tears glowing as they streaked down his cheeks. They're coming, he whispered. Ree stepped forward, her shadow falling across him. He looked up at her, his voice breaking. All of them. The archive sang inside him, exultant. The silence of ages had ended. The seeds had sprouted. Through him, they would bloom again. Arlen Vey, once just a xenobiologist chasing curiosity, had become something else. Not human, not alien. A beginning. And above Tau Cygni 3, in the endless dark, countless lights were stirring.